So the train station near me recently installed an electronic display board for adverts. I'm going somewhere with this, I promise. Well, I don't live in the middle of nowhere, I might as well, because there's nothing worth advertising around here, so the ads on this billboard were for events in London, even though London is about an hour and a half away by train. And one day I was walking past the station on the way to work, and there was an advert for the app TodayTix, which sells tickets for shows at the theatre. But this particular advert caught my eye, because it was a show whose name I thought I'd recognised, a play by the name of Your Lie in April. Yes, that Your Lie in April. It got a musical made out of it. That musical got translated to English, and I went to go and see it, and it's... well, I'll get to that later. You see, I had some misgivings when it came to the idea of going to the theatre, even if it was for Your Lie in April, since I actually studied theatre for quite a long time. In a way, it's fitting that I'm talking about Your Lie in April, because my feelings towards theatre are now much like Kosei's feeling towards the piano at the start of the show. There was a time when that was the direction our lives were taking us, but then we came to a moment where we just couldn't stand to look at it, and now we have to shut it out of our lives. Except in this case, Kosei was never really that good at the piano. Also, instead of it being years of abuse that broke him, this time Kosei just generally quit because he realised he had a general feeling of misanthropy towards other theatre students. Also, if Kosei developed this mindset in his 20s instead of when he was not, I'm not coming out of this looking favourably, am I? I promised myself a long time ago I would never set foot in another theatre. Yet, upon seeing that there were only 2 performances of Your Lie in April the musical, I booked a ticket, and my train to London because of only 2 words. Those words being morbid curiosity. So I bought a programme, because otherwise I'd have literally no footage for the rest of this video. Though, a few things to note about the programme itself, some of it is written in the quote-unquote manga font, which is nice attention to detail, even if you realise that the font they used for the logo is written in the same font as the logo for Mamma Mia. The cat also features prominently in the programme as well, which is odd because it didn't actually appear in the show. The programme also helped me to understand that this is not a quote-unquote regular musical. You see, this show is technically a musical in concert, which tends to mean a musical where nothing has been blocked out and it's mainly just the cast doing a sing-through of the script, with occasionally some orchestra backing it up. But clearly, the producers didn't get the memo this is a musical in concert, because this was a fully staged production with costumes and choreography. I think the only reason they said it was in concert is just because they really wanted to make the title long. As now, it's Your Lie in April, the manga, the anime, the play, the musical, in concert, the band, the show. The stage the show took place on was... well, I can't really comment on it because I could only see about half of it from the seat I got. But from what I gathered, there were 2 raised parts of the stage at the back and also a piano downstage. The actors didn't have that much space on account of them also sharing a stage with the orchestra, who are playing all of the music. And this is something that really worked in the show's favour, because whenever a character is meant to be playing, say, the violin or piano, they only mime the instrument and a spotlight will go onto the member of the orchestra who's actually playing the real thing, giving them the credit where credit is due. No, you could only see a bit of the orchestra, because in front of them was a giant sakura tree, because the producers knew they were only going to get one of Your Lie in April's lasting visual motifs in there, and training a cat was just too damn hard. This approach of knowing they weren't going to get everything in there is something that applies to the characters and story as well, since this is Your Lie in April's plot, but with several subplots and characters cut out, because you have to get the full story in under 3 hours. I'll go into more detail in a later spoilery section of the video, but just know that the actors all did a stellar job. The smaller scope of the cast also allowed for certain characters to be retooled, most interestingly Takashi and Emi, who have been turned into comic relief side characters owing to a diminished role, but unlike most attempts at turning serious characters into vehicles for gags, this actually worked really nicely. Lauren Shear and Ernest Stroud play off each other really well and stay true to their original characters, but also feel like they've got an extra over-the-top element added to them in order to make them work as part of a musical. While on the subject, the whole show feels like it had more jokes in it than the anime, as the anime had great moments of comedy in it already, but the way it's done in the show makes them feel like they weave themselves into regular dialogue a lot smoother than they did in the anime. And there are plenty of moments where the audience were in stitches. However, the jokes are a little more visual, but the character development isn't as show don't tell. The thing about musicals is that there's a philosophy with all of them, that being, why would you have an understated character moment that only lasts a minute, when instead you can put in, for lack of better terms, a massive fuck-off musical number. So as a result, a lot lot of the visual inferences from the anime are ditched in favor of songs, and these songs are unexpectedly varied, but in a very positive way. The music takes on a much more upbeat tone than the score for the anime, and for every heartfelt ballad, there's a song with full ensemble backup during the chorus. On top of this, all the main four cast get at least one song to themselves, if not several. All numbers were sung incredibly well, and with the aforementioned full choreography really lending some energy to it. The language in each of these songs are very detailed because, well, they have to be, since they're filling in for the lack of visuals that you would have in an anime. Though there were some odd moments of juxtaposition with these songs. The opening number of the musical does what any good intro song does, and is quite up-tempo to get the audience excited. Problem is, the song is about Kosei explaining why he can't hear the music he plays, because he feels disappointed for his dead mother. Now, as mentioned, yes, you should be getting people excited at the beginning of something, but at the same time, with this specific instance, it gives off a weird tone. It's getting the audience excited when the song is basically Kosei saying that I hear Beethoven the same way Namvets hear Fortunate Son, but hey, it is what it is. But once the show gets into its groove, the songs get the tone across very effectively. None of the soundtrack from the anime series makes it into the show, which in a way I'm kind of glad about, since I feel the effect of songs like Usa no Honto would really be diminished if you tried to put lyrics to them. But yeah, no Hikaru Nara. I'm sorry. And now we come to the spoilery part of the video, so if you haven't seen Your Lie in April, then now might be the time to click off the vid. No, realistically, if you have decided to watch this far into the video without having watched Your Lie in April, then literally who are you? Like, I'm genuinely curious, what is possessing you to watch this video right now? Since I'm talking spoilers, I now have the opportunity to talk about the two ways this differs from the anime for the worse. One is a structural reason, the other is a character reason. While I cannot speak for manga readers, Your Lie in April's anime is, in my opinion, perfectly formatted for its two core run. The anime is a game of two halves, the first part being about how Kosei learns to move on after his mother's death and regain his love of music, and the second about how he deals with Carrie's impending death and how music is now this time his coping mechanism. Both arcs complement each other perfectly, and both have a moment of strong emotional resolution at the end of them, which the entire half had been building up to. So it was my belief that the musical would do the same. After all, the intermission emphasizes two halves even more than an anime where some sickos won't even notice that the OPs and EDs have changed between cores. But the show ends its first half with Carrie's collapse on stage. While it makes for a good cliffhanger, and you can argue this is a turning point in the narrative, this meant that the resolution to the first and second halves of the story are put in the same act. It also flips things around for the anime, as now the first half is focused on the wider cast, and the second half is focused in on Kosei, instead of the other way around as it is in the anime. As a result, you hear all of the subplots almost coming to a screeching halt around the middle of the second act, with both Tsubaki and Watari literally saying to Kosei, fuck it, just get together with Kaori, and while you're at it, ignore basically all of my character motivation over the last 2 hours. But this is something the show kind of needed to do, because of what is, in my opinion, the biggest thing this does wrong. So, the show is called Your Lie in April, and if you'd only ever seen this theatrical version, then you'd maybe be a little surprised with that title. That's because in this version, Kaori isn't fooling fucking anybody. Literally in the second line Kaori says to Watari, she slips up, makes direct eye contact with Kosei and implies that she's in love with him. Kosei's feelings of unrequited love that drive so much the story in both the anime and musical really doesn't make sense here. Kosei gets several songs about how he feels like he's the third wheel in this musical. And while, like all of the other songs in this show, the language is incredibly vivid and true to the original characters, because of how this show has all but told you the twist, there's something in me that, even throughout these wonderful songs, is constantly yelling, she's not even pretending to be into Watari, just go for her. It also means that the final letter feels like more of a formality instead of the last piece of a puzzle that makes everything fit into place that it does in the anime. This was likely the intention of the adaptation, given the aforementioned early ending of Tsubaki and Watari's character arcs, and also the fact that most of the narrative is actually shown as a flashback from Kosei receiving the letter. But at the same time, I feel like comparing this to the anime, all of it feels quite a lot weaker. But on its own, oh my god, it's still incredibly effective. Every moment that you expect to hit went even harder in some cases. Even without the vision of the overcast sky and the washed out color palette, the hospital scene still fucking destroyed people. While the grief arc is not given as much build-up time, it's still given the appropriate depth and poignance. And you just know that Carrie's death on stage is probably the only thing that can reduce an audience full of weebs to tears. Well, Not all Blue Archive. The only way it's hard to compliment this show is when it's in direct comparison to the anime, and that's not really the show's fault. If I know there's a version out there with more time to flesh things out, given the full advantages of curating their visuals, a version which is only half the runtime and limited by what can be shown in a live-action theatrical production is always going to be seen as the inferior adaptation. And using the word inferior is something I do not want to do with this musical, because as mentioned, it is incredible. So I'm going to take this moment to talk about things that this show did better than in the anime. Firstly, Kaori's dad. Kaori's parents don't get much screen time in the anime, and in this play, Kaori's dad either gets the same amount or less. But with only one line of spoken dialogue and 2 minutes on stage, Yu Jin Huang steals the show for me with his performance as Kaori's father. He manages to provide both some of the best gags and moments which, when you know the context, are absolutely gutting to watch. Yes, this guy really did that within 120 seconds. On that note, the physicality in general is something that this show can boast above the anime. I haven't seen the live action film, so I can't really comment on how it was there, but using real actors swaps out the well animated but obvious physicality of the drawn adaptations for stuff that feels a lot more off the cuff and detailed, be it Dean John Wilson's constant flexing as Wataru, or Rachel Claire Chan's attempts to still look stoic as Tsubaki. The best moment of this show, a moment that this version holds over every other adaptation of Your Lie in April, is one that I'll describe for you now, but it needs some context. So it's right after Kaori has just told Kosei to never see her again. She wants him to practice for his final concert and forget about her. Kosei realizes that Kaori probably won't pull through. The pressure is mounting, and Kosei, after just having come to terms with his mother's death, is now faced with the fact the other person for whom he plays music is dying. And so he goes to the piano and he starts playing. Now, you know what I said earlier about how the band at the back play all the music? Not this time. Zheng Ji-yong goes to the piano and starts fucking shredding. No backup, no special lighting, no dialogue, no lyrics. It's just him playing the piano while still in character as Kosei for 5 minutes. If anyone has a recording of said moment, well, one, don't do that. It's rude to take photos or videos inside a theatre. But secondly, no recorded version of this would ever do it justice because of the sheer intensity of seeing it live. Seeing it live is the one thing that this musical was essentially made for. Oh wow, real shocker. I exited the theatre feeling great, and that feeling was only bolstered by those around me also having just had a great time. And I ran to the nearest station still feeling ecstatic, getting on an underground train, then another underground train, then getting on another train and going back to a place near where I live, and all the while there was someone looking over my shoulder the whole time just staring at the notes I was writing for this video. Okay, British transportation can be a bit shit, but I was still feeling amazing even roughly 3 hours after it ended. Your Lie in April the musical knocked it out of the park, and will succeed in reminding everyone why Your Lie in April is still so loved even to this day. Yes, it doesn't quite get everything right as an adaptation, even outside of the things it had to cut for its shorter runtime, but it knows its restrictions and has made the show the best possible musical it can be while still respecting the source material and being aware of said restrictions. Everyone involved in this production should be really proud of themselves, which, given my attitude towards theatre and the people who make it, is something I never expected to say. This show had a really short run, because the theatre it was on at is currently planning on showing Frozen until the heat death of the universe, so Your Lie in April only showed on 2 days. And both those days were in April. Meanwhile, the anime aired from October 2014 to March 2015, so not in April. The musical is now automatically the better adaptation. Why? The Trade Descriptions Act. That's why.